Hey, welcome back everyone. Great segment in store. First off, we're going to be going over the story I mentioned briefly yesterday, looking into whether Xi Jinping has fled Beijing. Also, the Chinese Communist Party is quickly losing international support and pressure against it is growing on many fronts. And Apple, meanwhile, is folding to more forms of Chinese tech censorship, but Telegram is taking a very different approach. We'll be discussing all these topics. Before we jump into it, folks, again, we've launched a Patreon. If you want to show your support for this channel, please join our team on Patreon. Also, for our Patreon supporters, we'll be doing live Q&As every Sunday. And I know some of you have donated in the past, and we'd like to get you on there as well. Apologies for that. We're just kind of transitioning to this system. YouTube has been censoring us pretty strongly, and so we've had to look into other options. We will look into other options to help you all out as well. So please bear with us while we kind of maneuver through this. Now that said, let's jump into the topics for today. First off, we'll be going in depth in this. Did Xi Jinping and other top CCP officials flee Beijing? Now, public reporting from within China shows some anomalies among top-level CCP officials. The reporting, the different forms we're seeing, is suggesting that many of them have fled Beijing. This includes even Xi Jinping, head of the Chinese Communist Party. The Epoch Times has exclusive analysis showing this case, and we'll go over it here. Now, first off, on June 11, Beijing began to report new cases of the CCP virus. After that, the epidemic intensified. Beijing did not dare to publicly announce a lockdown of the city, but has already implemented all lockdown measures in a disguised form. Now, since the outbreak started in Wuhan, the CCP considered protecting Beijing its most important focus, since Beijing is the CCP's center of power. If Beijing falls, the high-level officials of the Chinese Communist Party may have to evacuate, leaving the power center empty, and the consequences would be unimaginable to them. And now we're seeing that before and after the outbreak in Beijing, which started on June 11, the CCP's high-level officials' whereabouts are indeed strange. Now, Xi Jinping attended only 2 video conferences. On the evening of June 17th, Xi Jinping hosted the China-Africa Anti-Epidemic Video Summit in Beijing. Wang Huning, another top-level CCP leader, was also present. Yet although some officials were also at the scene of the video conference, it did not count as a public appearance. On June 22nd, Xi Jinping also participated in the China-Europe Video Summit, which also did not count as a public appearance. Other reports about Xi Jinping were through phone calls, congratulatory letters, orders, written speeches, etc. And in none of these cases did he show up in person. We'd have to go back to early June, before the outbreak in Beijing, to find Xi's last known public appearances. His last in Beijing was on June 2nd, again before this new outbreak. That was when Xi Jinping hosted a symposium and delivered a speech for experts and scholars. His next appearances were outside Beijing. From June 8 to June 10, Xi Jinping did inspections in Ningxia. This shows that starting on June 7, Xi Jinping had already left Beijing. Meanwhile, Li Keqiang appeared in public only once. On June 15th, Premier of the State Council Li Keqiang attended the cloud opening ceremony of the 127th Canton Fair in Beijing, and this was his only public appearance. On June 17th, Li Keqiang hosted the CCP's State Council Executive Meeting. The state-run CCTV did not provide any footage from the venue, but going by an image that was released, it looked like the meeting was held as a video conference. On June 22nd, Li Keqiang met with President of the European Council Charles Michel and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, again through video conference. From the start of the recent outbreak in Beijing, frequent patterns and anomalies in footage of his meetings suggest that Li Keqiang has limited his appearances to video. The anomalies began after he traveled to conduct inspections in Qingdao in Shandong province from June 1st to June 2nd. On June 4th, Li Keqiang led a meeting for the Epidemic Work Leadership Group. The state-run CCTV again did not provide any footage. It only provided text and photos suggesting the meeting again was held as video. The same evening, he gave a speech at the Global Vaccine Summit over video conference. And on June 9th, we saw this again. Li Keqiang chaired the State Council Executive Meeting, and CCTV, which is a TV station, video, did not provide any video footage, but again, only text and photos. This is a break. CCTV is a TV station. These are top-level CCP officials. And then on June 11th, he held a video conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. And so before we go into this again, the individuals we're describing here are the top 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee. These are the top-level officials of the Chinese Communist Party. Li Jianshu only attended the 19th meeting of the Standing Committee of the National People's Conference, and that was from June 19 to June 21st. And he wore a mask when he wasn't speaking. Before the recent outbreak, he only made 2 appearances this month. These were on June 1st when he hosted the 58th chairman meeting of the Standing Committee of the NPC in Beijing, and on June 9th when he chaired the 59th chairman meeting of the Standing Committee of the NPC. Wang Yang, again one of the top CCP members in the Politburo Standing Committee, went to conduct inspections in Xinjiang from June 8th to 12th. On June 19th, Wang Yang hosted the 37th National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which is a bi-weekly consultation forum in Beijing. He was seen wearing a mask during 2 meetings when he was not speaking. Before the new outbreaks, Wang Yang spoke twice on June 5th and June 8th, respectively, where he hosted again CPPCC meetings. Now again, Wang Huning, again one of the top CCP officials, one of the top 7. It doesn't appear he made any public appearances in June. On June 4th, he joined the meeting of the Epidemic Work Leadership Group chaired by Li Keqiang. But similar to other cases, CCTV, again a TV station, one of the main TV stations of the CCP, did not provide any video footage. It only released text and photos. And Han Zheng also made limited appearances. This is again one of these top 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee. And again, we see a repeat of these same anomalies in reporting that we've been seeing with these other top members. He made only 1 appearance after the outbreak began in Beijing on June 11th. It was on June 12th, and that was when he hosted the plenary meeting of the 24th Winter Olympics Work Leadership Group. Before that, he did inspections in Changsha and Yueyang and Hunan from May 31st to June 2nd. On June 3rd, he met with Carrie Lam, the CCP-appointed executive of Hong Kong, and their meeting was in Beijing. But again, the CCP did not provide photos or videos. So what are the whereabouts of top CCP officials? Going by reports we've mentioned and from official state-run Chinese media, we can see that around June 11, when increased cases of viruses were announced in Beijing, there was very little public activity among top-level CCP officials. Now, going by the evidence, we can speculate on whether we can prove the CCP officials are still in Beijing, and it would be fair to suggest they are not. Xi Jinping is probably not in Beijing based on this information. He only participated in some individual video conferences. Li Keqiang may not be in Beijing either. He only visited Beijing temporarily to see the opening ceremony, and the rest of his appearances were all in video conferences. Li Jianshu and Wang Yang may not be in Beijing either, but they had to show up at the National People's Congress and the CPPCC with masks. Wang Huning, Zhao Leiji, and Han Zheng may not be in Beijing now as well. The exact location of all these high-level officials remains unknown. It's possible they're in various locations near Beijing, or they may have gone even further. However, it is obvious that they dare not make an announcement of their whereabouts. Doing so would bring fear of public anger and would risk stirring up the undercurrents within the Chinese Communist Party. The large numbers of armed police now stationed on the streets in Beijing could be a sign of these concerns. And keep in mind, the People's Armed Police is a paramilitary force. It is not the normal Chinese Communist Party police force. Now, this raises some important questions. If the top 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee have fled Beijing, notably in an important time for the Chinese Communist Party, and notably at a very sensitive moment, again, when the public is looking to them for courage when facing this virus, when the public is being told that the CCP has a situation under control, what does it mean if the public finds out these members have fled? At the very least, it suggests that the top 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee see something in this virus, this new outbreak in Beijing, that possibly they're not telling the rest of China. What that is, we'll have to see, and again, we'll be covering this story as it develops. Now, moving on to some related topics, the Chinese Communist Party is quickly losing international support, and international pressure against it is growing. First off, this article from U.S. News, U.S. Intel, China ordered attack on Indian troops in Galwan River Valley. If this is true, and already India is having a lot of issues with the Chinese Communist Party over the fact that Chinese soldiers killed an estimated 20 Indian soldiers using metal poles with nails in them, allegedly some of them, this means again that the CCP itself would have given that order. In other words, this was not just a random standoff. This was a kill order from the CCP. We'll have to see whether that's true or not. That is again a claim from U.S. Intel sources by that outlet. Now, a bit of other points on this. The CCP's Global Times is making open threats against India in relation to this. They're saying confrontation with China is suicide for the Indian economy. Now, the CCP is making threats and will likely only push India further away from China by doing so. India is very, very unhappy with the Chinese Communist Party right now, as are many Indian nationals. And these CCP's, say, increased hostility rather than reduced hostility is very likely going to even push that further. Now, in addition to this, Japan has officially changed the status of the Diaoyu or Senkaku Islands, which China claims ownership over. And this will again very likely only increase tensions with the CCP over its claimed ownership of many parts of the South China Sea, at this point most of it. And meanwhile, the European Union is pressing China over trade and over human rights. The European Union presidents told Chinese leaders on Monday to make good on a promise to open up the Chinese economy, pressing China to respect human rights and warning of, quote, very negative consequences.
Beijing's imposition of a national security law on Hong Kong does not conform with the Hong Kong Basic Law, nor with China's international commitments. This was very clear. The national security law risks seriously undermining the one country, two systems principle and Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy we wish to see stay in place. And it is this autonomy that has allowed Hong Kong to flourish and to be so successful. So we also conveyed that China risks very negative consequences if it goes forward with imposing this law.
Now, the EU is now China's biggest trading partner. This is according to President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. But despite both trading at about 1 billion euros, or about $1.13 billion a day, the trade and investment relationship has been unbalanced.
We continue to have an unbalanced trade and investment relationship. We have not made the progress we aimed for in the last year's summit statement in addressing market access barriers. We need to follow up on these commitments urgently. And we also need to have more ambition on the Chinese side in order to conclude negotiations on an investment agreement.
And now, in addition to all of this, the leader of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, repeatedly defended the need for Beijing's national security law in Hong Kong in her weekly press conference on June 23rd. So let's look at the big picture of this. Japan is taking a stronger stance against the CCP. India is pushing a boycott on Chinese goods. The EU is calling out the CCP on human rights violations. This is in addition to previous pushes to investigate the CCP over its handling of the CCP virus. And meanwhile, the CCP isn't making a lot of friends right now. Not only that, it's doubling down on its threats and hostilities rather than lightening up. What will the effect of this be? Very likely they will perpetuate, just as they are in India right now, the decoupling of these countries from China. Now, in other news, Apple has folded again to China's tech censorship, but Telegram is taking another approach when facing CCP censorship. First off here from Ars Technica, Apple caters to China by pulling thousands of unlicensed iPhone games. And so in other words, Apple, a big US tech company, folding to Chinese censorship. And this is as the United States is trying to crack down on tech censorship. Companies like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter censoring individuals. Meanwhile, as TechCrunch is reporting, Telegram is pledging to make anti-China censorship tools for Iran and China. And on that note, this is a new approach they're demonstrating with how to deal with the CCP if they censor you. They are not catering to the CCP. They're not bowing down to the Chinese Communist Party's laws. They are looking for ways to get around the censorship while staying true to their values. Now, in other news, one of the big questions right now in the United States is whether these mass protests and mass gatherings that have been allowed to take place are leading to more virus outbreaks. And there is mixed reporting on this. We're looking first, an LA health official is saying it is highly likely that the CCP virus spike is linked to these mass protests.
So I do want to say that it's highly likely, given the increased numbers that we're seeing, that some of this is in fact people who may have been in a crowded situation at one of the protests where there was spread.
Meanwhile, 2 more Trump staffers have tested positive for coronavirus after the Tulsa rally. Now it says here, quote, after another round of testing for campaign staff in Tulsa, 2 additional members of the advance team tested positive for the coronavirus. These staff members attended the rally but were wearing masks during the entire event. Upon the positive test, the campaign immediately activated established quarantine and contact tracing protocols. And that's according to Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh, who told us to CNN in a statement. And in addition to this, in California, hospitals are wanting to admit only COVID-19 patients, as some of their own staff are testing positive for the virus. And so what are we looking at with this? Now, first off, there have been a lot of rumors that we're going to see spikes in this virus from these mass protests. Some of the media were talking about we're going to see spikes in this virus from Trump's big rally. Other reporting is saying otherwise. And so reporting right now is pretty mixed. At the same time, the Trump administration has tried clarifying that yes, we do seem to be seeing some spikes, but they're attributing that fact to higher testing. In other words, more tests being done, and not to the emergence of a second wave. And in some other news, Fox Business is reporting Delta is going to resume flights between US and China. And note, this is as China is beginning new lockdowns itself. And so again, is this going to be a repeat of what we saw with Wuhan, when individuals were allowed to travel outside of Wuhan after the CCP itself had begun putting restrictions in place? Or is it going to show us that maybe the CCP is covering it up again, and maybe there's no real threat? We'll have to see. Now folks, if you want to support this channel, one of the best ways you can do it is by sharing it. So really, please share this video, tell a friend or family member about this channel. Really appreciate your kind comments, I do read them. With that said, please take care of yourselves, please stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time.